Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Mic'd Podcast. I'm Mike, a hairdresser of over 20 years. One of the best parts of my job is the conversations that I get to have with all of my clients. We talk about anything and everything and invite you to listen in as we get mic'd up for today's conversation. On this episode, we have Austin in the chair. Austin is a 36-year-old working as the Director of Business Development for a large distributor. Today, we talked about what it means to be a true friend and what having a friendship actually requires. I hope you enjoy.
Make me look pretty.
Yeah, I'm just going to make you look as pretty as I can. Yeah. Don't worry about it. It's going to be great. All right, man. Welcome to the chair.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This will be fun.
All right. So before we get, I know you coming here, there was like, we're gonna hit some topics today. We're gonna talk about some stuff, but you had a specific thing you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Let's go.
I like the questions you have lined up, but I was like, let's have a real conversation as well.
All right, so let's get right into your topic. Like, what did you want to talk about? What was your?
So there's been some situations in my life that have popped up recently, and just in kind of personal things I've been dealing with, and conversations I've had with like coworkers and things, and the topic of like, what does it mean to be a best friend kind of popped up recently. And I think it was, as you kind of look at your life and the different situations and just different experiences that are kind of thrown your way, different people you meet and different friends you have throughout the kind of course of your life growing up. What does it mean to be a best friend? Like, what is that like point where you say, okay, as a best friend, it's my obligation and my responsibility to, tell these people this topic, or if someone's going through this, or if I notice that, my friend's going through something difficult, either they're doing something they shouldn't do. I don't know.
So like, what experience like sparked this interest of like, how do I decide what a best friend's roles would be, or what a best friend in certain situations should do? Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, like we all kind of have that one friend that we've just known for a long time. Is kind of like our ride or die friend, And so something I think has been really helpful for me the last few years is I had a buddy of mine that, I went through a period where I felt like I was kind of upsetting a lot of people. And just as you get married, you have kids, or depending on what you're going through in life, sometimes you have times where you're like really engaged with your friends, and you have times where you kind of like distance yourself a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And some of these friends that I've had, I've kind of noticed like if I tend to like step away or maybe not talk to them for a little bit of time, it's almost like people might get offended or feel like, oh, you're a bad friend, or then
just because you've stepped away.
Or it's like, oh, he's not talking to me, he must not appreciate me, or I'm upset that he's not showing up to everything. But then you have like that one friend, like, I don't know if you have any friends like this, but it's like you could go 6 months to a year without talking to this person. But then when you hang out with them again, it's almost like you pick up right where you left off,
Yeah.
There's like no expectations. You just know like friendship comes easy to you. You don't really have to work on it. And I think like when you bring it back to the topic of like a best friend, one thing I had a conversation with a really close friend of mine recently was, and really eye-opening was, he's like, you can't be all things to all of your friends. He's like, you got to bucket your friends, right? So I think like
what do you mean bucket your friends?
Well, like for example, I like to golf.
Okay.
Right. I've got my.
You're not very good.
I'm not very good.
No,
yeah. Liking it and being good at it are two different things,
Yeah.
obviously. But so I say, okay, I've got my group of friends. I've got my golf buddies. Right. I don't really expect them to be anything more than just we get together, we golf, we have fun. Then I've got like my work friends. It's like I show up, I work, we get to know each other, and that's kind of the extent of it. Or you've got, okay, these are my party friends. We get together, we like to have a fun time, but these aren't the people that I'm going to call if I'm having like a difficult night, or if I need someone to talk to or whatnot. And so that was kind of like eye-opening to me to be like, oh, I don't have to be like all things to all of my friends all at once,
Yeah.
And so it kind of helped me like set boundaries and things. But then it kind of brought up the topic of like, I have this friend who's going through kind of a really difficult time with their spouse. And you look at it and you say, okay, at what point as a friend do you say, at what extent are you able to get involved in that person's personal life? Like, for example, if let's say you have a topic where you're like, okay, I really have something that I need to address with this person, but it's possible that I could really upset this person and it could damage our friendship. Do you feel like, as that quote unquote best friend, it's your responsibility and your obligation to say, I owe it to you as a friend to potentially, damage things, but like this needs to be said because it's really important for like your growth and development, and it's something that I really feel, or that multiple people are really feeling like this needs to stop, or this needs to improve. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I feel like it's, I guess it all comes down to if you care about them. Like, if you care about them like you would care about your own child, do you tell your kid not to touch that stove because it's hot? Or do you just like in a friendship situation, it's, if you care about the friend and there's something that's happening that you feel like, dude, I need you to just know I'm here for you, or I need you to know, dude, this could hurt, this could be painful, this could be whatever. I think you almost have to have a sense of saying something.
Okay, that brings up the question of boundaries, though. Are there any topics you feel like, if it's like, let's take marriage for example. If that person, or let's say their partner, is not showing up in a specific way. So like, if you have a friend, let's say, that's coming to you constantly and is complaining about their spouse.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my gosh, just like they're not showing up with the kids. They're not being respectful. They disappear all the time. Like, I find myself having to do all of this. But then that they're not really holding their spouse accountable for those things and kind of letting their spouse get away with it. At what point do you feel like it's okay to like call them out a little bit and be like, you're enabling this behavior by not, Well,
and again, I think it all comes down to, you have to be willing. Like, again, if it's a friend that you're like, dude, I care about you. I'm just coming at this from an outsider perspective. I'm looking at it in a way that maybe you're not looking at it. Like, there was a business partner that I had a while back, long time ago, and everybody else could see what I couldn't. Everybody saw that this was not a good fit, this was not a good relation, but because when you're in that situation, you maybe don't see it. You have blinders on, or you see things from a different perspective. So as a friend, and especially again, if it's somebody you care about, you have to at least let them know your perspective, so that they can, and let them take it. Your friend might be like, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. You're a dummy or whatever. But from a friendship perspective, you wouldn't be being a true friend if you didn't say something.
Yeah. So that also brings up the question then of persistency, I guess, or like, how many times should you bring it up before? Like, for example, if I have a conversation, I say, hey, you're not showing up for your family the way you need to, or hey, you need to start holding your spouse accountable. If the behavior doesn't improve, or if things don't change, do you say, okay, I need to keep bringing this up? Or do you say, I've said my piece at this point, if I need to be a soundboard, and just let this person vent now? Or like, it's kind of a loaded topic to just be like, because we all have that person that's like, oh, just every time I hang out with this person, this is all they talk about, this is all they complain about, but they're not doing anything to improve it. Do you just say, all right, fine, it is what it is at this point. I've said my piece. I'm just gonna.
Well, and I think when it comes to being a true friend with somebody, like if it's just an acquaintance or like a coworker or somebody that you're like, again, you put them in these boxes of, this is my golf buddy, or this is my whatever. If it's those, and it's like, whatever, I said it once, but if it truly is somebody that's like, you've classified as a best friend, this, in order to get into that best friend category, there's things that they have to do in order to make that, and it shows that you really do care about them. So I would say, if it's still bothering you, and you see them in whatever, maybe they're in pain, or maybe they're hurt, or maybe they're sad, or whatever they might be, you continually say something until they either say knock it off or just let it go, or you just feel like, I'm kind of done with this.
Yeah.
It's not, obviously it's not helping anything. They're not taking my advice. They're not making any changes. So I'll just drop it. And it sucks because you have to see them go through whatever pain or sadness or unhappiness that they're feeling. But
yeah, I almost view it as like the role of like a parent with your children, you know, where you're like, I see something in you, I see potential in you that you're not living up to your fullest potential. It's just, I don't know, you know, I've got this situation of someone I know that's like, I need to tell this person this thing, but like, I'm not telling it to him because I know this is probably going to ruin our friendship. And I'm like, well, okay, as their best friend, is it your responsibility as their best friend to still bring it up? And go, yeah, I might potentially ruin this friendship, but this needs to be said. Or is it like, you know, I just shut my mouth and say, all right.
But I think if it's a best friend, you could also even just get to the point where you're like, dude, I want to tell you something. I'm going to tell you because I care about you.
Come sit in a chair. Let's get your hair cut and we can have a.
Let me tell you something.
Let's get your hair cut.
But no, like I one of my friends that I would consider my best friend in that situation. Like we can tell each other. Like I can literally walk up to him and we can be doing, and I can be like, dude, you're being a dick right now. Like knock it off. Like, and he'll be like, you're being a dick, you know. And then we hate each other for a second, and then we're like back to it because it's like, oh, I know he was saying that out of whatever. And I think this is guys and girls, there's going to be a difference because, I mean, doing what I've done for the last 20 years, cutting hair, I know that I've learned that when it comes to friendships, like a guy will say something to a friend and 10 minutes later, it's like, yeah, we're past it. Where girls will sometimes hold on to it and 10 years from now, it'll come up and they'll be like, remember when you said this?
See, and that's a topic too, is the difference between, you know, men and women and what that means to be a best friend. Like, you know, I've got a friend of mine, we've been friends, two of my friends actually, I'd consider my two absolute closest friends. One of them I've known since second grade and the other one I've known since like sixth grade. And we've had numerous times where just conversations with each other will piss each other off, saying things that's like, all right, this needs to be said. But we always kind of know it's coming from a place of love. But, you know, I think like one of my closest friends, I love that about him is it's like, hey, if I need to get my act together, he's not afraid to call me up and be like, dude, knock it off. You're being stupid. But like same thing with him, you know? And I always, it's funny, like in that moment, you might not appreciate it or you might get upset, but like as the years go on, you're like, I really, really respect like what this individual was like brave enough to say to me. Or, you know, you always have those like aha moments where you're like, you know what, I don't want to admit this, but they're right. You know?
Well, and I think too, like in this situation where you're talking about your one friend that's in the marriage or whatever, you have to sit like, try to put yourself in their shoes. Like, would you appreciate if a friend said something to you, or would you be like, dude, that was stupid or whatever? And I think if that relationship is as strong to make it into the best friend category, I think the majority, they would probably appreciate it. But at the same time, I don't know, I lost my train of thought on that. but it's like again, raising children. We do things and we tell our kids stuff, and they're gonna hate us for doing it. They're gonna be like, "You're a jerk." I still like, yeah.
But you know it needs to be done.
But you know it needs to be done, and then time passes, and you look back, and you're like, "I'm so grateful that my mom or my dad or my brother or my sister, they did this for me, because now, like, I get it."
I almost feel like it's answering the question like, what's worse? Because eventually you would hope that whatever behavior you have or someone else has, they'll probably notice. And is it like, oh, am I going to be more upset that they told me, or am I going to be more upset down the road when I find out that they knew and chose not to tell me? Mm-hmm. You know, which is more infuriating, or which one would you? I don't know.
Well, and
it's just, yeah. You know?
So I think I think, yes, I think you have a responsibility for it. But I think coming at it from a perspective of, dude, I'm going to tell you something. It's going to be real sensitive. It may upset you. I just want you to know my intention is not to upset you.
Just get them.
My intention is just like, hey, this is something that's really like, I'm looking at it from this, and maybe you're looking at it differently, but let's have this conversation because, again, I care about you, and you've made it into that realm of being my best friend, like somebody that I truly, genuinely care about, not just kicking your ass on the golf course or something like that. It's just like, I really want.
I see you not living up to your fullest potential, or that, there's something, I don't know. I just think especially, these last couple years as we've moved on past 2020 and, the world's just completely kind of changed. I think all of us have had to kind of face realities that we haven't had to before. Like I've been saying this with my wife for a while that, these last couple of years have kind of forced people to confront things that typically could be swept under the rug. But there's a lot of things that have kind of come forward and people have had to. It's why like the divorce rate's been so high the last few years. Like I've known so many people over the last couple of years that have gotten divorced, and I think it's because they were finally forced to confront some hard truths,
Yeah,
and that's kind of even been the same with like me and my personal development and things like my partner and I have kind of had to go through. But I've always been really thankful the past few years that I've had like those best friends that are like, all right, dude, let's have a real conversation here. Where I've been able to say, hey, man, there's something you're going through. I can tell.
Well, and I think those friends are honestly, they're harder to come by. And I think, with social media, like everybody has this idea that life is perfect and life is just and if I just post it on there, then everybody will think that I'm fine. And those best friends, the ones that truly do care about you, like they look past the post of, look at how happy we are, look at how this, look at that, and they truly come. So I think in your, say something, tell him, even if it hurts the friendship, which I don't think it will, as long as it's coming from a place of care, I think it'll actually strengthen the friendship, if anything.
All right. So, well, that being said then, Mike, I have something I need to tell you.
I'm waiting.
We're getting into this topic right now. We need to have a conversation. I'll wait till you're not holding a pair of scissors before I bring this topic up.
You're like, it's like a huge mystery reveal.
Yeah. We're going to get serious here for a second. There's something you've been doing that I need to know.
Oh, man.
But it's, it's just, I've been really thankful the last couple of years for really close friendships. And, I think everybody should, if you don't, go find yourself one. Well, but so now everybody needs like that one best friend,
This is going to be, because I don't know if you've experienced this or not, but let's talk about finding friends for a minute, because you're, 35, 36?
36.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would have thought you were like 50, but But no, it's weird because like a lot of our friendships that we create really do stem from, I hear people say, oh, we were best high school friends, or we were best that. And that. As you get older, 30s, 40s, do you find it harder to find new friends?
That's a good question. I think it depends on what your lifestyle is and where you're kind of at. For example, like I'm married, I have 2 kids. And I've gotten to a point, like I think I was, in my younger years before I met my wife, I kind of was like, I was very social. I was going to parties all the time. I had like a lot of, at the time I would have said I have a lot of best friends, but like, looking back, I'm like, I had a lot of really close acquaintances. But now I think like the older I get and just the different phases of my life that I get into, I'm like, I'm good with just like a small handful of people. Like I don't need to be out meeting new friends, meeting new people. I'm always thankful for opportunities. Like if I meet people, like I was at a party last night and, there was about 5 or 6 people there that I'd never met before. And it was good to get a chance to kind of meet new people, but I wasn't really like going, oh yeah, like I'm going to try and find like another really close friend. It was just like, oh yeah, but it can be hard getting out and meeting new people. But I feel like, I don't know, that's like, even if you take the topic of dating,
Oh yeah.
like online dating apps like weren't a thing when I met my wife, you know, but now it's like if you didn't meet on a dating platform, it's weird, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, how do you meet new people?
Well,
nowadays?
but I hear people all the time talking about like, and maybe it's just because like, oh, when you get married, now it's not just finding a friend for you. It's like, I got to find somebody that gets along with my spouse as well, you know, or finding new couple friends that are like, that you both get along with. It's
and almost in the same phase of life as you as well, you know,
Yeah.
like, cause I have friends that are single. I have friends that are married with no kids, and I have friends that are married with kids or single with kids too. And it's like, it's always difficult when you're at that phase where you're like, I'm married and I have young kids, and my single friends or my married friends with no kids are able to like go out and go on these vacations and go to these parties and things, and they're inviting you all the time, and you're like, dude, I'm sorry, I can't. Like, I'm at a different phase of life than you. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I've just found like as you get older, it becomes a much harder thing to find those true like real good friends that like, because I don't know, and my friend that we talked about earlier that fits into that category. Like we can go months without seeing each other and then pick it up like nothing has happened. Like it's just, we just pick it up where we left off. That was a high school buddy of mine. Like we've been friends for 20 something years. Finding that same connection with somebody now, and maybe it's just because we don't share the same experiences. We don't go through like those moments of, I don't know, discovery when you're in your high school years. I don't know.
Well, there's something to be said about like growing up with that individual, you know?
Yeah.
Like I think I always look back with like one of my best friends of like the things we used to do when we were younger and the stupid decisions we used to make. But at the same time, it's like that's kind of what strengthened our friendship, and we have like a lot of fun memories to talk about. So yeah, like the older you get, can it be more difficult and to find like that best friend? But I mean, life experience together obviously really solidifies that relationship. And I don't know. It's, yeah.
So in finding a best friend now.
Yeah. Sorry, Mike. I'm not taking open applications.
Will you be my best friend? No. No, but it's just like I feel like I talk to a lot of people that they like struggle finding friendship and like determining what, like, how do you build that relationship if you don't, for somebody that doesn't have a best friend, you know, like where does that come from? Like, how do you go about finding a best friend?
Well, you've seen the movie I Love You, Man, right?
Yeah. But what part are you referring to?
Just, you know, get out there and try meeting new people. And
just
go out
show
and,
up.
Yeah, just show up and, you know.
Just come destroy their man cave.
Yeah,
and be
exactly.
Like, I'm with you now. Oh man. Okay. Let's see. Anything else you want to say on friendship that we didn't cover yet?
I don't know. I think, I think we can end there.
All right. Well,
we'll cut that part.
No, but I mean, we're almost through here, but did you want to do this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll cut that line.
Let's tie it back into kids because we were talking about that. Is it your responsibility, like as a parent, like I've talked about this with lots of people. A lot of parents now want to be their kids' friends more than they want to be their parent.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you cut that line? How do you maintain a friendship with your child, but also at the same time give them a little
crack the whip a little
crack
bit.
the whip?
You know, parenting's kind of an interesting topic too, because I think generationally, it's just when you look at the different demographics, it's so different. And there's like, if you've been on TikTok, social media or anything, there's all these things about like millennials and Gen Z and Gen X and different parenting styles. And, you know, it's, for me, I was talking to someone recently, and I think they gave me some good advice when they said, your responsibility as a parent while your child's young, growing up and being in the house, is not to be their best friend, but to be their mentor. And that doesn't mean don't be nice to your kids or anything, but like, you're not there to be their best friend. You're not there to be like, oh, I'm just going to be the fun one at all times. You've got to have that line of like, no, I have to raise them and teach them how to be a functioning member of society and how to be successful. And you can't do that by not being willing to have hard conversations with your kids at times. And I think nowadays, like, parenting's hard, and you have days where you're like, man, I want to strangle my kids. But then you have days where you're like, this is the greatest thing ever. And those hard topics where you're like, all right, this is going to upset my kids, or this is going to be, a night where my kid's going to go to sleep really upset with me, but like, this has to be, it's like hey, Dad, it's right before bed. I want candy and a soda, and you're like, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And your toddler's going to run off screaming they hate you. And this is the worst family ever. But you're like,
so then because they say they hate you, do you just give in and be
say,
like,
oh, I don't want my kid to hate me. That's not good. But, I have an aunt who's, I don't know what her background is in, to be honest with you, but she is like a wizard when it comes to children. Anything like parenting advice, any situations I've ever been in where I've needed advice, she always has like really good answers and things to work on. And she kind of said, the thing about kids is it doesn't really matter how you treat them and like how you parent them. They're your children. They're going to love you. And that doesn't, she was saying that as like you're going to have those nights, you're going to have those times, especially when it comes to like, I don't know, like sleep training kids is probably one of the most nightmarish things in the world. But she's like, your kids aren't going to grow up and resent you because you were parenting them properly and teaching them to be, how to properly live their life, or eating habits or hygiene and things. And so I think so many parents nowadays, the fun part of parenting is really awesome, but the actual parenting part, right? That's where things get difficult.
Nope, I agree. All right.
Yeah, I'm looking a lot younger now.
Yeah, you look like
yeah.
You're not in that 50 range anymore. I'd say you're a good 49. So one last question before we peace out and finish this off, because I think we're pretty much there. Let's see. The last question I want to ask you.
Don't do penis sizes or anything. Let's
let's go with let's see. If you had to pick between, I don't even know. Favorite vegetable. That's a lame question. Never mind. Scratch that. Forget that one. I don't know. Would you rather? Let's do a would you rather.
Geez.
Would you rather have just hands, no arms, or just feet, no legs?
Oh God.
Like, so your hands would be like this,
T-Rex,
or your feet would be like coming out. Which one would you do?
Oh God.
I could play this would you rather game.
The would you rather game. Yeah, you should have an entire topic where it's just would you rather questions.
Hands like this.
T-Rex arms or feet? No. Oh man.
No, it's like you'd literally like your hand would be cut off right here and just stuck out of your shoulder.
I think I'd be a more motivational human being if I had just the T-Rex arms, but I could still have the legs. I think,
See, I'd go the opposite.
You go the opposite?
I'd go legs because
Why?
I could move around with my arms.
Oh,
I could
God.
do a whole lot more things with it. But anyway, thanks for sitting in the chair.
Yeah, man. It was
Thanks
fun to be
for talking.
here. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay. Peace. We out.